All right. So, good morning to everybody who is with us in Clubhouse. To Timothy Langley, who joined us just now, Janusz Kowalewski, who was there waiting for us to start the stream, and to everybody who is with us on LinkedIn and YouTube and also Facebook. Today we have, another special speaker. His name is Douglas Montgomery, and he is running a business in the field of and the entertainment industry. So, originally from Canada, Doug has been working between Japan and the United States and probably other countries as well. So, today we're going to talk about the entertainment industry and Japan's role in it. And this is Japan Expert Insights, the Wednesday morning podcast with Tim Sullivan and me as hosts. Doug, I don't want to keep anybody waiting anymore, so I'll give you the floor. Well,
Sure.
basically, I'll give you the screen, and I invite you to start by telling us a little bit about your Japan story, why you're here, and what brought you to Japan and how you started your business in this field. So the screen is yours, not the floor.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Anyway, it's thank you guys for the opportunity. It's my
Okay.
pleasure to be here. Hopefully, I'll be able to give some insights on my experience in Japan and some of the things that I've been working on. My history in Japan is 33 years. I first came as a English teacher from Canada on a working holiday visa. That was in 1991. I lived in Osaka for 4 years, teaching at the time the very famous Nova school, which kind of imploded
Right.
in the, I forget when it imploded, but it definitely imploded. But anyway, I worked in Japan as an English teacher for a few years. Then I went back to Canada, worked at a food company that was dealing with Japan. And then I was actually brought back to Japan just before the turn of the century in 1999. Um, from then, I did a couple of different jobs, went to graduate school in the US in the early 2000s, and came back to Japan with Walmart on many different trips because I was working as one of the people to help integrate the acquisition of Seiyu and Walmart, which happened in the early 2000s. I'm going to do this quickly so we can get to entertainment. And I did that for a few years. And then actually after working at Walmart, I got a job with Warner Brothers in the United States. And then Warner Brothers moved me to Japan in 2009. So I worked for Warner in Japan 2007 to 2009. And then from 2009, I was moved to the head office in LA, where I worked until 2021. And then from 2021, I started my own business in media.
Very good. Great. That's good. Good experience.
So that, yeah, 3 minutes of 32 years of my life, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess, the one point is, out of the 33 years, I've probably lived about half of it in Japan. So I think I'm 16 years living in Japan, 32 years dealing with it. And very soon I'll be 25 years married to my Japanese wife. So that counts too.
Yes, it does. Very good. Maya, your mic is muted.
As always, right?
Yeah. I'll do it.
Apologies for this. Yes. So you mentioned also that you worked in different industries, Doug, and
Mhm.
you worked, of course, in the retail industry also,
Mhm.
as an English teacher, and then for Warner Brothers and so on. But what actually got you to set up your own company and start doing what you're doing right now?
I decided to set up my own company for a number of reasons. Quite frankly, the biggest reason, like many people during the pandemic, people kind of rethought their life. And as I have a couple other places I've lived in those 33 years I didn't mention. But the point is, I really dragged my family around the entire world, following the next job opportunity, and that's not easy. I'm sure many of us have done that. So we decided to kind of flip the equation, and instead of letting work dictate our life, we decided to let life dictate our work. So really what we're trying to do now is kind of function as a digital nomad. It's relatively easy for me because I have a Japanese wife, so I can live in Japan without having to get that visa. That's a whole other story. But really, I'm trying to leverage my knowledge and connections, and pick up different contracts. I'm an independent consultant that support my life. So really, we're trying to be, actually not trying. We are digital nomads, and that was the main reason. The second reason is kind of segueing into what we're talking about today. I do have a lot of experience in entertainment, and Japanese entertainment is always, it's having a moment again. It's not the first time for Japanese entertainment, but it's having a moment again, and it's something I've been pushing even when I was at Warner Brothers. So the two kind of came together.
Right, and it's fascinating. I think that you're the very first digital nomad I have met
Oh,
and
really?
talked with. Yes, because I know that there are so many of them, and I read their stories online most of the
Hmm.
time. But I think that you're the very first one that I
Oh, wow.
have to, face to face, even though it's online still. But yeah, great. Okay, that's fascinating. And
Mm,
well, so let's talk about the entertainment industry, because I
sure.
know that you're very much into it, and the
Hmm.
topic. You've got your opinions about this
Hmm.
Japan, how Japan actually fits into this industry, and I think that we're talking about the global entertainment
Yep.
industry, but also let's say the Japanese entertainment industry is part of it, and we know that it has some very specific features, and
Hmm.
so let's dive into this right
Sure.
away. Yes.
So, I think again, the Japan's position in the entertainment industry is, I think a lot of countries would be quite jealous, frankly, of how strong Japanese properties are globally in the entertainment industry. This is kind of an unknown fact, but the by many calculations, the world's most valuable IP, so the world's most valuable media property, by many calculations, is actually Pokemon. um, uh, where if you calculate all the different sales, whether it's the movies or video games or trading cards, etc., it has a life-to-date value of around $120 billion. That is actually number one around the world. Obviously, that's happened over the 25-year history of Pokemon, but it's a lot of money. It's Mickey Mouse is number three, by the way, and that's a much older property. And number two, and we should celebrate it because it's the 50th anniversary, would be Hello Kitty, would be the number two media property around the world. So, Japan has been a very strong player in global entertainment for decades and decades and decades.
Right. Okay.
That's
So
amazing because Disney brand has so much power. I would never have guessed that. Never.
So
yeah.
the one little story, obviously the really hot thing these days is Japanese anime as it continues to grow. Um, because you mentioned Disney, we did a session 5 years ago where we had Makoto Tezuka speak to a group of people we brought together in LA about the history of Astro Boy. Makoto Tezuka is Osamu Tezuka's son. Osamu Tezuka is the kind of known as the godfather of anime. He's passed away probably 20 years by now, so unable to get him, but we did get Makoto, and he told us the story and kind of the interactions between anime, specifically, the things that his company and his father's company did, and Disney. But what was funny at the time, we literally had Makoto Tezuka speak at the Japan House facility at Hollywood and Highland. Across the street was the Lion King. Lion King was playing. And if you dig into the history just a little bit, you can see that there are many, theories, conspiracy theories about how actually Lion King is a ripoff of Osamu Tezuka's Kimba the White Lion. And if you want to spend the time, you can go online. You can see all the little side-by-side views and say this is a shot-for-shot ripoff. Um, but anyway, so we asked Makoto about this during the dinner, not publicly, and he was mentioning. He said, "Look, the interaction between his father and Disney had been going on many years, and they both he doesn't say it like this, but they both kind of ripped off each other. The big eyes that really kind of set anime apart, those are Bambi eyes, right? Like those were literally his father got the inspiration from Bambi. So this thing of to kind of take it to the bigger picture, Japanese entertainment and how strong it is, and interacting with Disney, that is a 60-year-old kind of back and forth, and I'm just letting you know kind of the root of the whole thing at the very beginning.
Well,
That's yeah. Sometimes there's a fine line between ripping off and cross fertilization.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, it's if you look at like, for example, pop music on the charts, you
Hmm.
can look at the same chord progressions in so many songs. Are they really like ripping each other off, or are they just using popular chord progressions? So the same goes with the blues, you know. So it's kind of interesting that I guess we can't help but be influenced by each other, especially when you collaborate.
Isn't that what Keith Richards said? He said, I ripped off every great riff made by Chuck Berry.
I don't know. He may
I think
have,
he
but
said it publicly, actually.
yeah.
but also it's another thing that our brains, they have limitations, and like it or not, we all have the same brains. Some of them work faster, some of them work slower, but at the end of the day, it's still the same human brain. And I think that creativity can only go that far, without well, especially when, as Tim said, that we are influenced by each other, and we listen to each other's pieces of music, or we see each other's pictures and other creations and so on. So it's fascinating. And I'm sorry, maybe I sound like too limiting, when I say that we still have all the same human brains, but well, we cannot fight the fact. So we will see.
A quick. I want to do a quick shout out to our loyal listener and our friend Yuka, who is absolutely crazy about Astro Boy. So I know
Oh,
her
really? Oh,
ears
interesting. Oh,
her
wow.
Yeah.
ears perked up. I don't think she can stay with us the whole time, but before she leaves, is she in Clubhouse today?
No, I think that Yuka is watching us on YouTube.
Oh, is she? Okay, okay, okay.
Yes.
Anyway, Astro Boy keeps
We
talking about
celebrated
it.
Asteroid. That is, this billion-dollar industry. I mean, that is the root. And just let me add, because this kind of segue into what's happening now with Japanese entertainment as well. But the story of how Astro Boy was discovered is quite simple. There was an NBC executive in Tokyo in the early 60s. I forget exactly what year, maybe 62. And he flicked on the TV and he was watching and he saw, oh, he saw, what's it, Tetsuwan no Atom, I think the Japanese name. And he saw it and he thought, this looks interesting. It's kind of, different. Um, and they're always looking for something. Entertainment is always looking for something new and fresh. That's what sells the most, not the copy, but the new one. So he saw it. He chased down Osamu, sorry. And anyway, to make the long story short, they ended up making a deal, and Astro Boy got put on US TV in the early 60s. But it got put on TV for primarily two reasons. Number one, it was new and it was fresh and something different. And number two, quite frankly, it was cheap. So it was to buy the rights and air Astro Boy in the US, it was less expensive than the animation that the US networks were making themselves or even buying from Mexico. So again, I mean, this is a diamond that this guy found, something new and interesting and cheaper than what they have already. Um, so I'm going to use that as that was the root of Astro Boy and the root of anime in the U.S. If you fast forward to 2024, and if you look at actually, if I just click on this, I can go into my slideshow, right? Because I got some slides I can.
All right, let me get this on stage as well, maybe
Okay.
like this. Okay.
Yeah. I can do it. Okay. Cool. I'm going to flick
Yes.
to number 20.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at Japanese entertainment now, and it's booming for many reasons. One is anime. It's at its all-time high overseas, and I think in 2022 was the first year that anime sales outside Japan were greater than inside Japan. But anyway, at the moment in 2024, these are a collection of headlines of Japanese entertainment that I have picked from foreign publications. So this is things like CNN or BBC, and they're just continually. And I've been following this for years, but they continually talk about the success of Japanese entertainment overseas and the interest of people to watch it, and it's incredible to see. Again, I've been involved with Japan since 1991. 1991, Japan made many headlines. A lot of them weren't all that positive because of all the trade wars that were going on. But this resurgence of Japan and Japanese soft power now is so much better because it's all the positive with very very little of the negative that was there in the early 90s. And I think that's a key point that I want to say today. And it's really an area that people who are involved with selling Japan either overseas or selling it to foreigners in Japan um, may or may not be aware of. But it has never been better, and it is absolutely a time to lean in. So anyway, those are a collection of headlines. Obviously, the two Oscar wins, The Boy and the Heron, the Ghibli movie, and Godzilla Minus One, help. Shohei Ohtani, let's leave that one incident on the side for the moment. But this is a picture of an event we had with him 5 years ago when he was with the Angels, and we honored Shohei and Marie Kondo as the Japan American Society International Citizens Award. And I can tell you, at the time, this is actually at Marie Kondo's height. So this is, the tidying up of Marie Kondo on Netflix. This is the height of her fame. And I'm just going to tell you, Shohei was so much bigger than her, even at her height. And that was 5 years ago. And I don't know what it is about Los Angeles, but when you drive up the 5 freeway from Anaheim to LA, everything is magnified by 100 times. And now with him being at the Dodgers, it's just so much bigger. And again, I can't explain it, but regardless, if you look at this slide here, you see on the bottom right, there is a gentleman on a ladder. This is a picture I took. We were driving through LA in December 2023, and I just saw this guy painting Shohei Ohtani on this liquor store in Redondo Beach. So I stopped my car and I started talking to him, and he told me two interesting things. One, he wasn't paid to do it. He just did it because he's a huge Dodger fan, a huge Shohei Ohtani fan. And then two, the liquor store just said, yeah, go for it. The wall's empty. But the point I want to make here is, this is a Mexican-American guy who loves Japan, loves Shohei Ohtani, and he is doing this on his own time and his own dollar. And that is kind of the fandom that Shohei has right now in the U.S. with Americans, not with Japanese Americans, not with this and that, but just regular people. So, the effect of him in LA is huge. The picture directly to the left of the guy on the ladder, that is the local sporting goods store. It's called Dick's. And those are just racks and racks and racks of Dodger and Shohei Ohtani t-shirts that they're selling to regular people. So it's just incredible, the interest in Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I'm a fan too.
Okay.
Well, yes. Oh, please go ahead. I just wanted to say
Sorry.
that, yeah, when we say the entertainment industry, I think that in Japan, indeed, the parts of that entertainment industry that are popular here in Japan are different from the ones that are popular out of the country, just as you mentioned a little bit earlier. So, but yes, let's continue, and we'll talk
Yeah,
about.
I'll get back to the point in a second, Maya. I just want
Wonderful.
to talk about this as well. This is
Yes.
not all that well known in Japan, which surprises me. But
Mm-hmm.
every July 4th weekend in LA, Anime Expo happens. And Anime Expo is the biggest convention in Los Angeles, bar none. So
Okay.
LA is a busy town, lots of things happening, and the biggest convention on a per day, per capita basis is actually Anime Expo. These are some photos from last year's version. They sold out, 400,000 visitors over 4 days.
Oh,
Anyway, you
wow.
can see the pictures. It's huge, right? But it's
Yeah.
not all that well known on how big it is in Japan. And
Mm.
it is the single biggest Japan themed event in North America every year. And the one example I'll give is not last year, but the year before that, we were standing in line in the hot sun for an hour and a half to get our COVID check. Um, and behind us we heard two people speaking in Japanese. So we turned around, and one was an African American lady and one was a Hispanic lady, and these two ladies were speaking to each other in Japanese. So the point is that for them, going to Anime Expo is actually like going to Japan. It is partially and to a large part about the anime, but it's also about kind of entering this, Japan culture bubble, eating
Mhm.
Japanese food, eating takoyaki. There are other things going on at Anime Expo that don't revolve around anime, so it's kind of turned into Japan Expo, and it's huge. And again, many other countries around the world would love to have this kind of attention, but Japan has it for any number of reasons, and I think it's again, something that all of us can kind of lean into.
Yes, indeed. And I am fascinated by this, by what you just shared with us, because I was not aware that there was an anime expo out of Japan. Like, well, there were no such expos. And I would think that it would be something that the Japanese government has sponsored, but maybe it's not really that kind of
Well,
event.
actually, interesting point. I don't know if anybody from the Japanese government's on or not, but they didn't. They kind of sponsor now, but this was actually the real interesting thing. And I think the important point is this is a grassroots buildup
Mhm.
from many years. I don't remember exactly how old Anime Expo is, but it's probably 20-25 years. It started I think it was in a crappy little Best Western in San Jose, and it's just grown steadily over the years. But it was grassroots. It was, the anime fans participating, and then eventually companies jumping in that built it to what it is today. Obviously, now, given its size, the Japanese government is there, and the LA Consul General is there to cut the ribbon. But as far as I know, I don't believe the Japanese government gives them any money. Um, and as far as holding the stick of soft power in LA, I would argue that the Anime Expo has the biggest stick of all, uh, more than any company and more than the Japanese government. But it's really grassroots, and again, it just goes to the popularity of Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Right. And so
It's
the other
fascinating.
thing,
Yeah.
yes, fascinating. But while watching, seeing, looking at the slide, and I was thinking, we know that also other countries in this part of Asia are trying to catch up. Of course,
Hmm.
they still have a long way to go before they do, because the Japanese anime has this long history, and as you say, the fans, the sheer number of fans out
Hmm.
of the country and within the country is just very difficult to reach. But we know that the Chinese anime
Hmm.
industry is, gaining momentum. Probably
Yep.
there is a similar there is a similar movement in South Korea as well. So what can you tell us about these other national anime industries? Let's say, how do they compare in terms of followers, in terms of what they do,
Sure.
and yeah.
I think I have a chart on this as well. Let me see. Where is it? We don't have much time left, but I think I have one more chart that might help explain this. If we go to slide number 32, I just present slide number 30,
Okay. Yes.
32. Okay.
Yeah.
This chart here is from a partner company of mine called Paired Analytics, and they measure what they call demand points. A
Mhm.
demand point in the internet, a demand point would be like a Facebook like, a Google search, a piracy download, et cetera, et cetera. So there's literally millions of them. Anyway, when they roll it all up and they measure the amount of demand in the United States for non-English content. So if you look at this chart here, then this is up to, it's by quarter, but the last quarter is Q4 2023. The orange is Japanese content. And of demand for TV shows, non-English original TV shows in the United States, 43% of the demand is for Japanese content. 43.
Wow.
Number two is the gray. It's Spanish. I forget the actual number, but I think it's around 13, 14. I can't remember. And then the yellow is Korean. So what is interesting is we've all heard about Korean content over the last few years and how popular it is. Um, that's one point. The second point, just so everybody knows, the number of native Spanish speakers in the U.S. is around 42, 43 million. which literally makes United States the second biggest Spanish speaking country in the world after Mexico. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty close to Spain. So the fact that, number one, Japanese content is actually stronger and more popular than Korean content speaks to the library and the history that Japanese content has that Korean content does not. You cannot argue that Korean content has not been very, very successful over the last 5, 6 years, and it's kind of been a burn up from about 15 years ago. But regardless, they don't have the 60-year history, and Japanese content does. So people like to watch new stuff and they like to watch classic stuff. And Japanese content has a much, much, much deeper library than the Asian competitors. The second point, and this is a whole other talk show, but the fact that with just under 1 million native Japanese speakers in the U.S., that their content, Japanese content, can be that much more popular than Spanish content with 42 million native
Mhm.
speakers, again, just speaks to the universality of Japanese content versus other countries. So my attention question, there are competitors. People obviously want to get in on this. Korea has been probably the most aggressive. Other countries like Thailand are basically copying the Korean government policy. Taiwan is copying the Korean government policy, um, but they got a long way to go.
Right, but still, I also following or building up upon my question. So we know that yes, they're competitors, and Japan has this 60-year long history. But don't you think that Japan and the Japanese anime industry, and in general the entertainment industry, has been a kind of complacent because of all this? They do produce a lot of,
Mm,
let's say, comics and a lot of anime, a lot of books and concerts and everything here for the um, consumption of the local market. But
mhm.
how does it look, when you are out of Japan? Because from what I heard, it sounds to me that the biggest fans, of course, are the foreigners there. But at the same time, it's like they're pulling that content out of the country because they're interested in it. And it's not so much that the Japanese pop industry or entertainment industry is actually intentionally creating
Mm.
content for consumption out of Japan.
I think, yeah, that's the key point, right? Like I think what Korea has done to be as successful they have been was intentional. What
Hmm.
Japan has done is probably less intentional and more, kind of a secondary effect. So, all these numbers are fine and dandy, but they're all rear view mirror pictures. So the question is,
Right.
where do you go from here? And I think, the key point, and this is, something that my company is trying to do, and we're pushing, and it's not an easy push, is Japan needs to be more intentional about using its soft power around the world and being much more aggressive because their competitors are getting aggressive. And
Yeah.
again, all this data is in the past. Okay, that's fine, but now what? And I think this theory of the Galapagos theory of Japan, where they had this
Yes.
big, nice, protected domestic market, and everybody would fight over the share here. And once you get a nice big share here, you actually had a pretty big share, right? Because Japan was typically the second biggest economy in the world.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then going overseas was always a second thought. I think those days are over, definitely with the internet and how fast things can be distributed globally. Um, Second of all the other everybody has seen the power of Japanese culture on the world, and they want a piece of it, right? And that's
Yeah.
actually how the Korean content has gotten as strong as it has. They saw what Japan had, and they said, I want a piece of that. Other countries are doing the same thing. So I think what has made Japanese content in the past definitely does not guarantee success in the future. And I would, suggest, and this is basically what my business does, is let's be more intentional and more strategic in, capturing a larger share of the global market from the very start.
Right.
So can I sort of, ask the question on this point?
Yes. Go ahead,
Hi,
Yuka.
yeah, thank
Hi.
you so much for the shout out, Timothy. And can I throw in one comment before I move with my two questions?
Yes.
You
Go
know that
ahead.
I think to me, okay, it's my personal opinion because the greatest thing about entertainment it's very personal, right? So it's your relationship with the your content. To me,
Mm-hmm.
Osamu Tezuka's best work is not Astro Boy. I think it's anime called Dororo. I highly, highly, highly recommend for anyone who hasn't seen that anime. It's great. It has something for everybody. It has something for all the points. If you wanna cry, you can with the
Oh,
anime. So anyway, that's my sort of you know
Dororo
two cents.
is, yeah.
Anyway, so
Okay.
that my question. So this I love those anecdotes. I'm in the Dallas of now, but we used to live in California for 20 years. So I know those. In San Diego they do. I think during the summer it's Comic Con. It's not only anime, but it's the comic conference. I think it's a short version of it, and I love those shows. But my question is about Maya's point. It's international, the competition. I've heard just today earlier. It's the graphically or in the visual, those Koreans and even Chinese are really copying those visual portion of anime good. But seems like those voice actors, they're still behind. So what especially Chinese, anime productions are doing is they are sort of, importing Japanese voice actors and then pay much more than Japanese production companies can pay. And
Mhm.
I think it just kind of, I think that's a kind of threat. What is your take on that, Douglas?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a huge threat. So remember the comment I made about Astro Boy in the first place, why NBC bought it. One, it was new and fresh, and two, it was cheap. So, there's this again, it's probably not a theory, it's probably somewhat true, that the Japanese anime has been underpriced ever since the original sin of selling Astro Boy cheaper than at the time US and Mexican animation. And anyway, you fast forward it to now, and you see all this popularity of anime around the world, and you have to think about it. Who is making the money, and where's the money coming back to? Netflix is one of the huge distributors of anime around the world, making their own original anime. Crunchyroll, which is now part of Sony, but for many of the years it was not. um, and I think a lot of the issue, and the challenge of having Japan being more intentional going overseas, is that at present a lot of the money from the Japanese self culture is actually not coming back to Japan, which is very sad. It's these creators who have this magic um, ability to make something that the world loves, but the money is not coming back here. And if that doesn't get changed, you will see creators leave Japan and go somewhere else, and you know potentially participate in a Chinese production or a Chinese, as you say, copy of anime, and that's a huge challenge, and that's something that definitely needs to be addressed today.
So yeah, follow up to that. So I'm just when you're talking about government sort of the support, and I was just thinking about BTS in Korea. The success of BTS I've heard, okay, but it's because Korean government put they really put a lot of resources to develop those talent. They use the government money to do that, and then I don't recall hearing of the same thing about
Mhm.
Japanese government. But to me, the entertainment industry is the important asset to Japan. So. Do you think that the Japanese government may, do something about financially?
So anyway, the presentation you're watching is something I showed to the Japanese government on Monday. Um, so I just had this conversation with them. The Japanese government is well aware of what other governments have done around the world. Um, so I think they do have in their mind, to do something. I mean, we can all argue the success or lack of success of Cool Japan in the past, but that is the past. What is happening in the future? Um, I will tell you this, that the Keirin-dan now is taking a much more serious view of the power of soft power, um, than they had in the past. In the past, Japan was very good at hard power, making, gadgets, making motors, and making cars and these kind of things. Um, but they are, at an official level, taking a much deeper view of the power of soft power. Again, working for Warner Brothers in LA for a number of years, um, I'm sitting there working on this little small lots, where Harry Potter comes from or Batman comes from, and it's amazing to me that when I take a business trip or a personal trip to like Bali or Brazil, and you flick on the TV and there's Harry Potter, there's Bruce Springsteen, like the ability of soft power to sell a country's hard products is absolutely unparalleled. And again, I think the Japanese government is finally realizing the power of soft power, and will likely take a bigger a bigger, take bigger steps in making this successful going forward.
Oh, so your company is a bridge, sorry, yeah, bridge between those, foreign market and the Japanese government. Is that what your main like a mission or purpose?
Well, that is my main purpose. As an independent consultant, I'm quite happy to get a contract from Japanese government or a private company. But regardless, I think given my experience and knowledge, I've been fortunate to be invited by different ministries of Japan to kind of give my opinion. But again, as an independent consultant, I go through the sofa and I look where the pennies are and I pick them up.
Yep,
Right.
that's how it works.
Me too.
Yep, you have to. I just have so it's interesting that Maya used the word complacent, because I believe it fits, but I also believe maybe it wasn't, the intention wasn't not to promote. I just feel like the natural Japanese inclination doesn't self-promote. I feel like that's just kind of baked into the culture, maybe, and or maybe they don't know how to self-promote. But putting that aside, the fact that even though they didn't self-promote, but they still got wildly popular, speaks to the power of the product. Like almost in spite of not promoting yourself. But as you astutely pointed out, they're hurting themselves because the money isn't flowing into Japan that could be. And so do you really think the Japanese are going to move forward and try to get better at self-promoting? Do you see movement in that direction in terms of the skill of doing that?
I think I think they have to, and I think it's easier to do something when you have to.
Yeah.
Right? When you don't have to do something and you just stick something on a shelf and it sells, hey, that's great. But now when you have the home screen on Netflix and Squid Game is pushing out, let's say, Attack on Titan for the the top spot on the carousel, you have to work a little bit harder. As I mentioned, I worked for Warner Brothers for many years, and what did we do? We sold Harry Potter, and people say, "Well, how hard is it to sell Harry Potter? Everybody loves Harry Potter." Yeah, you're correct. Everybody loves Harry Potter. However, what was my job? My job was to go to Amazon and convince Amazon to push Marvel off the homepage and put on Harry Potter. That wasn't easy. Why? Marvel's popular too, right?
Yeah.
People like Marvel movies. So to get Amazon to put Marvel below the fold and put Harry Potter above the fold, that wasn't easy, and that was my job. I think now, as far as Japanese content goes, yeah, it's very popular. Attack on Titan's popular, One Piece is popular, but so is Squid Game, right?
Yeah.
So now they're fighting for that spot on the homepage, and they're trying to push out Squid Game, and that they're going to need to be much more intentional.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Right. Yes. And it is interesting because, yeah, I also believe that people say how they ask you how hard is it to sell Harry Potter. Everybody loves the movies and so on, but until everybody started loving those movies as well, I think that there was a path just, I don't know how to put it, but a certain period of time when the salespeople and everybody had to actually do their job so that everybody started loving Harry Potter. And I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken, but I think that basically you have that period in the beginning with everything that you have to work very hard in order to popularize it, and to get people on board, and to get to that level of popularity, so that it makes it, to a certain extent, it makes it easier, or somewhat easier, to sell things. And it's not easy yet, as you explained just now, Doug. Yeah.
You know, Pokemon, they worked hard to become the top IP in the world. Like that is a long history. They spent a lot of money. They have
Mhm.
mistakes, but they worked at it.
Yeah.
That wasn't that's not a you don't get there, but just because you don't get there without working.
And what's so amazing about Pokemon is I remember it was a big thing when my kids were young and they were like crazy into it. But
Hmm.
right now, my 70-year-old sister-in-law is addicted to Pokemon. Like
Wow.
it has it has transcended
Hmm.
demographics, like kids and adults, and adults like our age are doing it because it's a good excuse to take a walk and be healthy. And then you got kind of a little, a little moke sticky, you got a little thing to look
Yes.
forward to. That's
Yeah.
amazing how they did that.
Yep.
And that's a lot of work too, because now they have included, the healthy aspect of playing that
Hmm.
game. And so it's ideas, it's work, it's marketing, it's everything.
Hmm.
So it's not that easy at all. Uh, well, not as easy as it looks. And Doug, I wanted to also read a question to you.
Sure.
So we have it from Conrad Chan in Clubhouse. And the question is, first, good morning. May I ask what you mean by the money doesn't come back to Japan? Do foreign companies, other than the original creator, producer, earn that portion of the profit? Or do Japanese producers intentionally keep the cash out of Japan for tax purposes? Thank you for the answer.
Well, it's all dependent on different things, but what I really mean is basically these products are licensed overseas, right? Um, and once you license it, you lose a certain amount of the money, obviously with the license, but you also lose a lot of the control. So who has the power at the moment in the entertainment industry? You look at companies like Apple, Amazon, and Netflix. They all come from one coast, the west coast of the United States, and
Mhm.
they really control what goes on the home screen. So the distributors have the power at the moment, and if they have the power, they have the leverage. Again, you can argue Crunchyroll is a Japanese company, but for 90% of its history, it was not, maybe even more. It was actually an American company. So actually, Crunchyroll probably did more than anything to promote Japanese anime in the US, and they made a lot of money doing it. So I think really what I meant there was the distributors are capturing a large share of the profit pool, and it's not coming back to Japan.
Right.
So you're
And
saying one avenue to do that is to become a distributor or to purchase a company that distributes. Is
I
that
think that ship has sailed. I don't see
okay?
any. I mean, who in Japan is going to compete with Microsoft or Amazon? The Japanese
Mhm.
government. Other than the Japanese government, nobody's got the money. So I think that ship has sailed. But there are other ways. There are these tier two streamers that are more niche. I mean, quite frankly, Crunchyroll was a niche streamer on its own for many years, and look where it came. So I think this concept. I mean, this actually I think I have a slide on this, to be honest, if I can find it. This kind of goes to where entertainment itself is changing to. It's actually slide number 50. So entertainment is changing now, where the middle person, which in the old days, or not the old days, but was people like Warner Brothers, or let's say the Yomiuri Shimbun or whoever, and they would be sitting in between the creator and consumers. In this picture here, you would have in the middle, it's now labeled, it's called enabling tools and platforms, but in a different slide, we don't really have time to go back. It would be called intermediaries. The intermediaries are kind of getting squeezed now in between creator and consumer. And what is emerging are, these platforms, and these platforms also have these different tools that enable creators to access consumers directly. And a lot of these a lot of these players are, both, people like YouTube and whatever, they're both distributor and enabling a tool. But this, can provide a way for creators to access consumers directly and get a larger, share of the money directly. And I think this is one area that Japan should study more and more going forward. Because I mean, I can go into it too, but there was a streamer that was actually owned by Cool Japan. It didn't go well. That ship has sailed. I don't see anybody competing with Netflix or Amazon or Apple today.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's
I know Disney haven't been able to compete with Netflix either. So on the streaming world, so can I sort of change the the sort of, can I change the topic a little bit? It's of course in the
Yes.
entertainment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So whenever you talk about any content in any form these days, you cannot do without discussing AI. Now, I think you are in a very unique position because you are not creator, you are not distributor, so you are not promoting a type of content. So how can the industry cope with AI and then maybe to take advantage of that? It's becoming sophisticated every day. What is your take on that, if I can ask?
That's a really tricky question. So, if you look at, well, it's okay. You can talk about things like Dolly or ChatGPT, these AI tools. One thing that I would say, like last year, there's this big strike in Hollywood, right, where the actors and the writers were fighting with the studios over money and different things. And to me, it was just two people standing in a corner fighting each other while standing on the sidelines was the real enemy. And you could argue the real enemy are people outside of that relationship, and that could be ChatGPT or Dolly or whatever, these AI tools. These AI tools are coming, or actually they're here now. If you have seen the Sora and that famous scene from Tokyo,
Yeah.
these tools are coming, and what it has showed is that with enough computing power, you can pretty much match any kind of creativity, any kind of quality that others have. Actually, I do have a slide on this. So if we go back to the slides, this is part of my presentation. Oh, actually, well, here is Sora. This is pretty good. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was really, really good. And that's, that was 2 months ago. It's probably better now. But this was kind of the main point to, the Japanese government, what can be done now. And, what is scarce in a world of infinite quality. If you consider that using, in particular, AI tools, you can create quality like Sora that are basically as good as, what was made before AI, what is scarce. The only thing people open their wallet for is something that is scarce. If something's infinite, no one's going to open up their wallet for. So on this chart, we kind of focus on, these areas that I circled with the white the white line. First of all, good ideas and good stories. I mean, those at this point in time cannot be created by AI. That's one. As you mentioned, I am not a storyteller. I'm not a producer. I'm kind of a business guy. So the second point, and this really I kind of press rather heavily, first party data. Like what is feeding these companies like Google and Netflix and even ChatGPT and Dolly? It's this first party data. The data that they have on consumers who are interacting with their products that actually is enabling them to monetize or create something even new. And again, this first party data is primarily owned by the distributors. It doesn't go back to the creators. And if it doesn't go back to the creators, then the distributors have not just distribution leverage, but they also have information leverage over creators. And this, if this doesn't get solved, then this is probably the biggest issue of all, in my opinion, because if they have all the power, the knowledge power of what consumers are interacting with, then that really puts them the distributors in a better position than creators. So this is an area, if you are the creator and you can connect directly with consumers, you can own this first party data, and you can use these, quite frankly, data driven AI tools to improve your product. This is mission critical in my opinion. I can go through the other points, but this is probably the most important one of all.
Oh, I'm sorry. So can I confirm, my
Mhm.
understanding? So you're saying that a direct to consumer, the content creator can do that. Is that what you're saying?
The direct to consumer, the content creator would actually have access to this first party data. At this point in time, they have to, and actually, quite frankly, they don't give it up. They would have to ask Netflix or Amazon for the data, and they don't give it. They don't give it
Mm.
to Warner Brothers, quite frankly, and Warner Brothers has more leverage than a single creator. So this is
Mhm.
really like data has been weaponized, and if you listen to Ted Sarandos from Netflix was on a podcast. I forget which one it was, but the podcasters asked him, like, why don't you give up the data? And Ted Sarandos said, because it gives us power. Right? He was
Right,
very honest. So if if Netflix is telling you they're not giving you the data because it gives them power, that pretty much tells you you need to get your hands on the data. And there are ways to do it.
right.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Interesting.
Thank you for that, really. Yes, for the answer. And we also have another question on LinkedIn this time, and it comes from Anthony Burnau. So the question reads: what are your thoughts on why Korea has somewhat taken the United States by storm? What can Japan learn from that? I see how Korean music, K-pop, shows up everywhere.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of reasons. I'll focus on two. One, again, the Korean government has put in a lot of money, and they actually took a very intentional strategy on how to be successful in the U.S. And if you dig into it a little bit, you'll see that there are American. There actually it's really a global machine that's behind K-pop. They have Swedish producers, American executives doing marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So that the Korean government kind of looked around the world and thought about how could we be successful around the world. They took the best of the best and applied it against K-pop. Um, Another example I'll give, and I'll use my wife as the example. She doesn't follow K-pop and she doesn't really follow U.S. pop either. I played her what's that song? BTS Dynamite, and I played her Justin Timberlake's "Can't Fight This Feeling." Um, they sound really similar, right? Like they really sound. If you were starting fresh on both songs, they are really really close. So
Yeah.
that K-pop sound, that is just distinct enough to be interesting and different, but not too distinct that it's nichey. I would
Right.
argue, and Tim, you may be better to speak to this than I, but I would argue that J-pop is one or two levels nichier, and that is kind of what's holding it back. But again, to go back to the first point, there was an intentional strategy from Korean government to be popular with that sound, and that is an American hip hop sound,
All right.
definitely. Uh, Kari Pam Pam, that is not that is her sound. It's very nichey. She's got super fans because I've been to her concert in LA, but that is a
Mm.
nichey sound.
Well, that's interesting because you mentioned that the Japanese pop, J-pop, is nichier, and I can see how it is the reality, in fact. But I also, you know what they say in marketing, that if you want to grow your market segment or your market share, you have to concentrate. You have to actually limit your audiences when you start marketing. So I wonder what your take on this is, because obviously these are counterintuitive, right? So you want to grow your market share, but you have to concentrate on a specific segment in the beginning. So in order to be able to do that, and maybe it doesn't work this way in the entertainment industry. I don't know. What's your take on this?
Well, I think I can't remember if you mentioned I'm originally from Canada or not, but anyway, I am. So from Canada, there's a lady named Shania Twain, and Shania Twain was, I think, arguably the world's most popular musician in I don't the late '90s, something like that. But anyway, I forget which album it was, but she publicly announced that her and at the time husband Mutt Lang were going to make the world's most successful album by sales. Like that was their intention. And I think it was probably her third album. And by then, she had massive hits with her first two albums. But then when they went out and they were intentionally going to make the world's most popular album, I think the album did well, but it wasn't the world's most popular album that year. So
Yeah.
it doesn't work if you're going to make the world's most popular entertainment product as a strategy. So
Right.
you have to. So the answer won't be very nice and tidy, but it's not that easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
you have to find that tricky little balance. And you actually, I don't think you find it. I think you probably stumble upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was BTS going to be somewhat successful in the US given, this kind of copying of a hip hop sound? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Were they going to be number one? That's probably more of a factor if they were new and fresh and, the K-pop army and the rise of social media and all these wonderful things coming together. Entertainment industry is famous for saying, that the biggest hits are lightning in a bottle. You can't plan them. The
Right.
copies you can. Um, there's a guy at Warner Brothers. His name was Peter Roth. He ran our TV department, and he was old. And every year he would tell us the same speech, but it was relevant every year. He would say, "Look, the most popular TV show coming up this year, I don't know what it's going to be. Nobody knows. It'll be something new and fresh. Therefore, as a company, every year we got to put some kind of big bet on a brand new idea to
Mm.
kind of spread the risk. We will also do some copies, right? So the example he gave at the time was American Idol. American Idol is a British show, but let's put that aside for a second. American Idol was the number one show on TV. It was new and fresh to American eyes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Warner's, but what Warner did was copy it with a show called The Voice. The Voice was
Right.
very successful, but will never be as successful as the original
It was.
gangster of American Idol.
Yeah.
Same thing I think the same thing applies to Korean music and BTS.
Yeah, right. So you
The,
need to find that sweet spot
yeah.
between copy and originality. And
The
then,
age-old question for artists is: are you selling tickets or are you creating art? And
Mm,
the people who really succeed, like you said, it's almost kind of luck. You're
mhm,
creating art, but you got lightning in a bottle, or you're going the safe way and you're riding the wave of whatever is
mhm,
popular and trying to have a little offshoot of it. So I listened to Rick Beato a lot. He's a YouTuber and his thing is music. And he was going through the charts on Spotify and the number of hits songs are getting. And his some of it's mind blowing because hip hop based on that metric is going down.
mhm.
So if your art creates a new genre or a new wave, that's catching lightning in a bottle. But I agree with you. I don't think you could use it as a strategy. Just I'm going to sell tickets to as many people because then you're no longer authentic.
Mhm.
Just my little commentary there.
Art's a tricky one.
Yeah, I know.
Art's a tricky one. People take it
Yeah,
yeah,
very personally.
yeah.
always,
Um,
indeed. Yes, Yuka.
I'm sorry. I was dying to ask this to someone, and then Doug, you're the it. Sorry. um,
Okay.
why is Taylor Swift so popular? Is she her own genre? Is that it?
I
I
don't
don't.
think so. I think, I mean, I may not be the right person to ask. I think she just hits all the right buttons. I don't think she just hits all the right buttons for so many ways. There's also, honestly, there's also a bit of a black hole in the cultural zeitgeist that somebody always fits, and today it's her.
Ah, that's interesting. But what are the right buttons? Is-
She has, not her music is not all that offensive. It's kind of catchy. It appeals to teen girls, and they have a lot of influence. Um, she's somewhat scandal free. She's
Mm,
attractive, but not overly attractive. I mean, she's just there's a whole bunch of little, for lack of a better word, lukewarm buttons that she presses extremely well. And there's a fairly heavy marketing machine behind her. And to go back to the black hole comment, there's a black hole. So marketing dollars are going to find something to fill that black hole. They
mhm,
found her.
She's very likable. I don't listen to any of her music, not because I hate it. I just not my generation or my. But when because of all the things that have come to light, and with the NFL boyfriend, she's in the spotlight. So I actually listened to a couple of her interviews. She comes across as very authentic, down to earth, very likable, in addition to her music, which, by the way, a lot of her music is the same chord progressions. But I'm not saying that in a bad way, because you can say that about the blues and a lot of jazz, and a lot of genres have patterns of, chord patterns. But for some reason, like as you said, she pulls it off, and she found her niche. And I don't know, there's this authenticity about her personality. She's very likable, and I'm not even like a fan of hers, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's hard
So
to.
yeah, that's a great, I think she's very likable. So, so and then she found that right button. I mean, she's become gazillionaire. So maybe I'm looking for my right button. Thank you.
But again, I mean, honestly, again, I'm not a creator. I'm from the business side of entertainment. Don't discount the marketing money that goes behind her to
Yeah.
Yeah,
accelerate the authenticity.
and highlight it. Yeah.
There
Yes.
are very sophisticated PR departments and money that goes behind these things that
Yeah.
really accelerate it. I mean, don't discount that.
Just the other day, Tim and I were talking, and talking about some opinions about her and why she didn't make the top of the Japanese pop charts. And I think this is my opinion, and this is just, I'm not a specialist. I'm not into the entertainment industry at all, but I thought that basically that huge marketing machine behind her, they never set it, they never made it a target, for her to be number one in the Japanese
In
chart.
Japan on the charts.
Mm.
Yeah.
On the
Right.
charts, I'm talking about the charts, and still,
Right.
even though she didn't make the number one there, she still, Tim, she sold the Tokyo Dome 4 times.
4 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I am right or not, and maybe I'm mistaken here, but to me it looks like that she basically doesn't need to be number one in Japan to still make money and sell her songs and everything.
But I think this is an interesting point. I think you have to really ask every one of them, why did you go?
Right.
I would argue the number one reason was not necessarily because they loved her music. It was probably
Hmm.
more FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, hey, something cool is happening here. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also, Maya, part of our conversation. So I'm an old fart, and so I came here in the 1970s, and American bands were the big acts because the Japanese boomer generation, they loved American music, they loved American rock, and some of them like British. And these acts would come. I saw the Eagles, I saw Jackson Brown, I saw Fleetwood Mac, all at the Budokan, and everybody had their T-shirts on. And I feel like the Japanese market shifted, and they created their own version of rock, and I think that's good. I'm glad they did. And I think for the youngsters, there's a little bit. I'm just going by my gut. There seems to be less interest in foreign acts and more interest in some of the local acts, at least compared to my generation of Japanese, my Japanese friends. So I think some of that was a market shift in
Yeah.
preferences and homegrown music. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would argue the same thing happened with movies.
Right.
Probably 15, 20 years ago, the bulk of the Japanese box office went to US movies. Now it's flipped. About 20%
Mhm.
goes to US movies and 80% goes to Japanese movies. And there's a
Right.
bunch of reasons for that as well.
Yeah, and I have seen the same trends back home in Bulgaria because when I was a little girl, and my brother, who was much older than me, so he would listen to all those, the British songs and then American rock and hard rock and pop and everything. But then when I was growing up, and it's just a decade later or so, we already had our homegrown rock stars there. And of course, we still listened, to all the stars from overseas, from abroad, but the homegrown stars would make the top I mean, of the charts. So I think that it's probably not just a Japanese thing. It has
Mm,
happened,
Yeah,
um,
good
yes,
point.
agree.
Good point.
yeah, in
Good
many
point.
many countries, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it continues to be so back home actually. So the homegrown artists, they come first, and then the foreign artists come second. Yeah. Well,
The other trend I saw, I'm sorry, just
no.
back then you made your money as a rock and roller by selling albums.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
And now you
true.
make your money because their songs get ripped off online and they don't have to buy it, and just the whole shift in the music industry. So now it's you make your money touring.
Mm,
That's a lot of them. That's how they got it, and it's also self promotion at the same time. So the
Yeah.
whole game changed.
mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as long as I know, actually, Avril Lavigne was actually one of the first. She pushed the button of that change, initiated it,
Yeah.
right? So it's really interesting. But well, we can talk about. And Doug, I would love to have you once again. In
Oh,
the
Sure,
very
my
can't
pleasure.
believe we're past 7 minutes after. Oh my goodness, that's
so
good. That means it
Oh,
was
is it
really
okay?
good.
All right. Okay,
yeah.
I'll take that as a good.
Yeah.
So thank you so very much. This has been a very, very good talk, and thank you for the insights. Once again, please come once again, and at least
Sure,
once again. So let's
sure.
continue the conversation. And well, we are late, 7 minutes late. It doesn't happen on Wednesday morning. So thank you very much, Doug, for making this possible. And
My
so
pleasure.
Yeah.
yes,
Thank you
it's
so
my
much.
pleasure. Thank you. Well, and to everybody who watched us on the 4 platforms we're live streaming, thanks a lot for sticking with us until the end of this podcast. This podcast remains on YouTube, Facebook, Clubhouse, and also LinkedIn. You can watch it anytime you want by going back to those channels. And well, we'll be here once again on Sunday, 8:20, with the Japanese Politics One-on-One, and then next Wednesday again, when we'll be talking about a different topic about Japan again. So, Doug, thanks a lot, and that's all for today.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
you,
Let's
Doug.
talk about Demon Slayer next time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
wonderful.
I know. I want to know why it got so popular, but anyway, thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
Yuka. Bye.
Bye.